Rancangan ini dimuat turun daripada podcast IKIMfm pilihan utama anda.
Luk dan Pian kembali menemani pagi anda di Warna Pagi IKIMfm. Hari ini hari Selasa 28 Februari 2017 bersama dengan
satu Juban Lisani Juban Akhir. Pagi ini Alhamdulillah, dan tamu kita sudah pun sampai dan bersempena dengan ulang tahun ke-25 Institut Kefahaman Islam Malaysia. Kita bawakan mereka yang banyak berjasa kepada Institut Kefahaman Islam Malaysia, dan kali ini beliau merupakan Ketua Pengarah IKIM yang ketiga. Khidmat beliau sebagai Ketua Pengarah di IKIM dari 2005 hingga 2009. Betul Datuk Iaitu yang tidak lain dan tidak bukan
yang berbahagia Datuk Dr. Syed Ali Tawfik Al-Attas bersama kita pada hari ini. Assalamualaikum Datuk.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Apa khabar kita?
Alhamdulillah.
Terima kasih Datuk sudi luangkan masa bersama sahabat pendengar IKIMfm pagi ni. Mungkin ramai yang turut merindui, selain daripada staff di IKIM, ramai yang rindu lama tak nampak kelibat ataupun sosok tubuh Datuk di IKIM, dan sahabat pendengar juga pastinya nak dengar suara. Kalau biasa kami dengar di stesen ID Datuk yang besar IKIMfm pilihan utama. I can do that actually. Only you can do that. Dan hari ini Datuk bersama kita untuk segmen inspirasiku.
Okay.
Mungkin soalan pertama maaf Datuk kalau soalan ni a bit boring to you, tapi kita mungkin nak tahu sedikit sebanyak apa antara yang sedang Datuk lakukan sekarang. Mungkin masih lagi menulis banyak perkara-perkara yang boleh dikongsikan.
Ya, saya selalu menulis, tapi menghabiskan penulisan tu agak lambat juga. Ada 3 buku yang sedang ditulis, tapi satu pun belum habis lagi. Itulah biasa dengan saya kalau saya menulis. Kadang-kadang tulisan tu tak habis-habis.
Masya Allah. Mungkin banyak kritikal.
Bukan, ada banyak gangguan juga dalam masalah kini yang dihadapi pihak golongan Muslim juga. Jadi saya fikir, tulis, tapi tak habis-habis. InsyaAllah satu hari nanti habis lah.
Nak explain pasal penulisan pun bahasa berbunga-bunga Datuk. Nampaknya memang minat dalam penulisan tu sangat mendalam Datuk. Tapi insyaAllah kita nantikanlah, moga-moga dapat disiapkan, disempurnakan.
Penulisan ni pun mesti ada pembacanya juga. Jadi kalau kita tulis sesuatu yang tidak senang dibaca, tidak senang difahami pun pembacanya pun kurang.
Okey.
Tu Datuk, kita sebenarnya ada banyak soalan dari Datuk ni. Antaranya cabaran umat Islam sekarang ini di Malaysia dan juga di dunia, dan termasuk juga pengalaman Datuk mentadbir IKIM satu ketika dahulu. Yang mana Datuk prefer? Nak jawab mana dulu? Cabaran semasa ke ataupun ketika mentadbir IKIM satu ketika dahulu?
Ketika mentadbir IKIM itu bukannya susah sangat. Semasa saya dilantik menjadi Ketua Pengarah di sini, saya tidak bertujuan datang ke IKIM untuk menjadi seorang daripada sebuah pasukan. Saya datang ke sini untuk mengambil alih. I'm not a team player as far as that's concerned. I came to take over, not to be part of a team. But as far as the Muslim problems of today, there are many. Maaf kalau saya cakap dalam bahasa Inggeris. Of course, we all know lots of the problems that are faced by the Muslim world, but unfortunately, these problems are created by the Muslims themselves. We can't really blame anybody but ourselves. Chiefly among these problems, of course, is caused by politics, in my opinion. I think most of these issues, politics has a hand in it. And politics should actually wake up and see that they are not supposed to be interfering with chiefly matters concerning religion or matters which they really don't understand, or at least get the advice from those people who understand and who know what they're talking about. But we can say there are maybe 3 groups of people who are responsible for the problems, one of whom are politics. The other one is, of course, the business world. And probably the third one is the modern-day scientist.
Right.
These are the 3, I think, who are responsible for a lot of the world's woes. I mean, politics should not interfere with religion. I've said this many times before. They should understand their role. Most of these people don't understand their role, in my opinion. Of course, this is just my opinion. This is not the opinion of perhaps IKIM or IKIM listeners. It's just my opinion. You cannot have politics misunderstanding their role. For instance, the politician is an administrator. He is not a religious scholar. He is not someone who understands the ins and outs of history. He is not the person who is supposed to be the one who is adjudicating. He is an administrator. That's his job. And he's supposed to be the Wakil Rakyat after all, isn't it? But if you are Wakil Rakyat at the same time you think that you are also ulama, you are also historian, you are also all kinds of other things, you're going to have a problem. And this is what we see today. Not just in the Muslim world, in the West it's the same way.
Oh, itu peranan yang Datuk sebutkan tadi. Jadi Datuk, mungkin pada pandangan Datuk, who should speak for Islam? Kalau sekiranya ada isu-isu yang berkaitan dengan Islam, agama itu, siapa yang sepatutnya?
No. Masalah di sini bukannya agama, tetapi penganut agama itu. Bukan agama.
The Muslim.
In Malaysia, for instance, we always talk that peranan organisasi ini, peranan organisasi itu untuk to defend Islam. Islam doesn't need defending. Islam is Islam. It's already established. Allah is the defender of that. It's the Muslims who are the ones who are the problem, not the religion. And we have always been hearing this, not just from other Muslim scholars who know what they're talking about, but also from Western people who understand also that Islam is not how the Muslims are portraying it to be. And yet we still insist today that, we have to explain Islam properly. What's the deal? I mean, it's not Islam that has to be explained to people who are not capable of understanding it. You know what I mean?
Masya Allah. Jadi sangat mendalam falsafah yang Datuk sebutkan sebentar tadi berkaitan dengan bagaimana Islam itu sudah sendiri agung, sudah tinggi kedudukannya, Datuk, ya. Mana kata
golongan Muslim yang sepatutnya diberi perhatian.
Ada satu baru-baru ini kita baca sedikit kisah bagaimana Presiden Turki sendiri menyatakan macam kalau isu semasa terkini, beliau melarang para pemimpin dunia atau masyarakat dunia daripada menyebutkan Islam itu dan mengaitkan Islam dengan teroris. Maknanya beliau menyatakan jangan gunakan teroris pada Islam.
Tapi dia bukan orang pertama yang menyebut pasal itu. Lama pun masa dulu pun ada orang menyebut pasal ini. Dulu pun di IKIM sendiri kita telah pun mengatakan bahawa soal mengaitkan agama dengan amalan yang tidak baik, yang dilarang sebenarnya oleh agama itu tidak sepatutnya dibuat. Tapi masalahnya kini orang Muslim mereka mengambil istilah-istilah daripada Barat tanpa memikirkan padahnya. Sebagai contoh, in the past, people used to say the Mohammedans to refer to the Muslims.
Right.
This one also is not correct. It's difficult for the opposers of the religion of Islam to mention Muslim. They will call them Muhammadan first, and that didn't work. And then they started to shift again. This is all politics who did this. They started to call them Islamist. Now, when I was Ketua Pengarah in IKIM before, I used to say to them that this is a bad thing to do because what you are referring to are the Muslims. But if you say Islamist, the emphasis now becomes on the religion and not on the practitioner of the religion. In other words, if you say Islamist, the emphasis now is on Islam, not on the Muslim. And therefore, if you find someone who is extreme, who doesn't interpret Islam correctly, rather than blame the person who's doing the interpretation, you blame the religion. And this is what happens all over the place, even today. Look at how some of the people talk about Islamophobia. Sebenarnya tidak ada. Sebenarnya, istilah itu memang ada. Islamophobia. Dia orang yang mereka kan istilah ni sebenarnya. Tapi in reality, it's not Islamophobia. It's demonization of Islam. This is what's happening. Not Islamophobia. Mana ada orang takut dengan Islam? They are demonizing the Muslims and they are demonizing Islam. But then again, can we really blame those people for demonizing the Muslims when the Muslim behavior is not in line with the religion? Isn't it? I mean, the Muslims sometimes, especially in this country, I see, the Muslims sometimes fail to understand that it is not your faith that makes you a better person. It's your actions. Bukannya agama yang buat kita orang yang baik. Sebaliknya amalan kita.
Amalan dan termasuk juga mungkin corruption of knowledge, Datuk.
This is something we've been mentioning a long time ago already, corruption of knowledge. But before, when we said this again, when politics gets involved, they think we are talking about raswa. How can you... the raswa of knowledge. It doesn't make sense, isn't it? What we mean when we say the corruption of knowledge is ilmu itu sendiri diputar belitkan dan dijadikan salah. By whom? By people we can refer to as mutakallif, isn't it? Bukan yang membawa kebaikan, tapi sebaliknya membawa keburukan. Jadi faham yang sepatutnya bermakna dijadikan faham yang tidak bermakna. This is the problem here. Of course, not just in Malaysia, the whole of the Muslim world macam ini. I mean, now we talk about extremism. Kita tukar belitkan istilah bahasa Melayu. Bahasa Melayu sudah mengatakan melampau atau pelampau, golongan pelampau. Tapi hari ini kita nak kononnya macam sophisticated. Ekstremisme, terorisme, it's all nonsense. I mean, what kind of an English language are you using when you need another qualifier to explain what you mean by that? Lagipun kalau kita mengatakan ekstremisme, terorisme, yang kita maksudkan golongan pelampau yang melebihi batas. Tapi bagaimana pula dengan golongan pelampau yang tidak sampai kepada batasan itu, yang mengurangi batas? Itu pun ekstremis juga. Secularism is an extremist, isn't it?
Yeah.
The same thing is for the other side as well. The ones who go beyond the limits, these are also extremists. Falling short also are extremists. There's two sides of the coin, but we only emphasize yang kita nampak dengan jelas, dengan mata jelas. This is the problem. And politics is the one that changes these things. Dia yang menukarkan istilah-istilah Melayu dalam bahasa Melayu yang menjadikan kita fikir dengan tidak betul. Sebab language and thought is one thing that's reflexive. Cara kita bertutur, cara kita cakap, istilah yang diguna pakai, itu akan memberi kesan kepada cara kita berfikir.
Menarik tu. Baik, terima kasih Datuk atas saya itu sedikit mukadimah bagaimana Datuk nak memberi fokus juga pada what we call kemelut penggunaan kalimah atau istilah yang kadang-kadang sampai menjadi kekeliruan, menyebabkan orang confused and then menyebabkan satu salah erti khususnya dalam kalimah-kalimah atau istilah-istilah di zaman moden ini. Mungkin kita akan discuss a little more later on insyaAllah berkaitan dengan isu ini dan jangan ke mana-mana sahabat-sahabat sekalian, kita masih lagi bersama tamu untuk inspirasi ke pagi ini.
Tamu kita Dr. Syed Ali Tawfik Al-Attas, mantan Ketua Pengarah IKIM, atau lebih spesifik lagi Ketua Pengarah IKIM yang ketiga. Pada ketiga
InsyaAllah di mana pagi
IKIMfm, pilihan utama anda. IKIMfm, pilihan utama anda, 8.35 pagi. Alhamdulillah, apa khabar semua? Ada sarapan belum? Harap sarapan dengan bismillah dan disyarahi dengan alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, hari ini kita juga banyak dapat ilmu berkaitan dengan sesuka bila yang berbahagia Datuk Dr. Syed Ali Tawfik Al-Attas sebentar tadi menyebutkan bagaimana istilah-istilah yang biasa kita dengari akhirnya kita sendiri yang terjerat dan terperangkap di balik maksud-maksud istilah tersebut Datuk. Macam contoh, kita sebelum ini mendengarkan bagaimana kalau dalam Islam kita ada adab, kemudian kita gunakan manners, ilmu, kita gunakan sciences dan apa lagi Datuk? Just, adil and just.
Dalam Islam, istilah yang dibaratkan.
Adakah tepat penterjemahan kalimah atau istilah tersebut Datuk dalam hidup kita?
Setengah-setengah kalimah tu senang diterjemahkan dalam bahasa asing. Tapi yang setengah yang lain memerlukan penjelasan lebih lanjut. Ini sebabnya begini. Bahasa Melayu boleh dikatakan bahasa scientific. Scientific saya gunakan dalam bahasa Inggeris ni to give the English meaning of what scientific means. In other words, it appeals to the akal fikiran. This is what bahasa Melayu is. It's not a language of romance like the English language, the French, the Germans, to some extent, the Italian. These are languages of romance, and they call them the languages of romance because these are associated with feelings, with the heart, the way you feel, isn't it? But the Malay language is a language of science. It appeals to thought, and therefore, if you think of a Malay term that appeals to one's akal fikiran, then you won't be confused, isn't it? Sebagai contoh, I'll give you an example. In English, you say demonstration. Sekarang orang Melayu dalam politik pakai istilah demonstrasi. But what the hell does that mean? Demonstrasi. Mesti ada lagi satu perkataan yang lebih tepat, yang menghalusi makna demonstrasi ini. Tapi kalau dalam bahasa Melayu, you say tunjuk perasaan, kita dah tahu apa maknanya. In other words, you are showing your displeasure, isn't it?
Yeah.
In other words, the person who's doing the demonstrasi atau the tunjuk perasaan, he is not the person who is leading him, ketuanya, does not appeal to his akal fikiran. He appeals to his emotion. That's why he tunjuk perasaan, isn't it? In English, if you say demonstration, they'll say, what are you demonstrating? Demonstrating what? Your displeasure. Or demonstrating your happiness, or whatever it is. So if you use it in Melayu, in Bahasa Melayu, demonstrasi, it's actually an English word. But you Malayanize it by putting asi at the end there, as if it's some kind of sophisticated Malay new term. And therefore it becomes a problem. Now you're asking about adab just now. Is it okay to say adab is manners? No, I mean, it's not. I mean, adab is much more refined than just adab. It's civil, cultural, social refinement in civilization, that kind of thing. But it's not simply manners. I mean, manners is part of adab as well. But adab also includes scientific works. That's why you say adab dan peradaban. Isn't it? You're referring to literature as well in that case. You're not just referring to manners, you're referring to literature. And you have to have a certain kind of justice also involved in adab, because the way you write has to be in a certain way that appeals to the reader so that he understands what you're writing. Therefore, you have to be just to the language that you're using. Isn't it? It's not a simple matter of just simply translating left and right. I mean, now you have all these words like terrorisme. What happened to that? There is a Malay term. Keganasan. Melampau for extremism. Isn't it? I mean, there is already Malay terms in that. Why must you use a different term? If you say, now you are changing it, you're just transliterating directly the literal thing. Macam sekarang, dulu semasa saya di sini, yang berhormat Perdana Menteri telah tanya saya mengenai satu istilah yang dikemukakan oleh, I think it was Dewan Bahasa maybe, wanting to add it to the dictionary. What was the term? Penggodam.
Okay.
Penggodam. And it's supposed to be for computer hacker, penggodam computer. But the Malay word penggodam is not the right word to use. Because menggodam means you have to use some force, isn't it? Macam menghayun kapak, isn't it? You have to swing it. You have to beat the thing. That is what menggodam is. You have to actually physically beat something, isn't it? Hack at something. But in Malay, you already have penceroboh, which is what actually computer hacker is. Penceroboh maklumat, isn't it? Why must you change to penggodam? Simply because hack is an English word, so you look for the word in Malay. What is hack? And they say menggodam. But the Malay word, it means to menggodam with force, like someone chopping a tree down. That is menggodam, isn't it? Chop, to hack. It's not a simple matter of just taking one word from English and put in Malay, or taking one word from Malay, put in English. It's not like that. We are two different traditions. One is a scientific language, another one is a romantic language. Therefore, you need to have proper understanding of both cultures, both language, both civilization in order to do it.
Bagaimana sebenarnya Datuk melihat peranan yang harus dimainkan oleh IKIM setelah 25 tahun ditubuhkan?
Well, IKIM sebenarnya dia institusi, isn't it? Institute Ma'had. Kefahaman Islam. Therefore, an institution to try to explain things to do with Islam to the Muslims. Our main focus should be to the Muslims, because apparently the Muslims are the ones who are most in need of understanding these things. And I mean, today, in today's world, once again, you have politics involving themselves in everything. Now, I find that there are more things haram than halal. And this is not possible. I mean, not possible at all. I mean, how is it that, as far as I understand it, as far as Islam is concerned, the only entity that can declare something to be haram is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How is it we think that we as human beings can then sit on the shoulders of the Creator and say, well, this thing is haram, this thing is halal? That's not right. You cannot do that. What is haram is very clear already in the Quran. What is halal also is very clear. But if today you start declaring things haram and halal, that's totally wrong. And who's to blame for this? The Muslims. We can't point the finger to the Western world and say this is all because of them. It's not because of them. A lot of the problems that we have today are not really our problem. We should just leave it to the ones who are creating this problem. It doesn't involve us at all.
Mana kita terlalu ambil kisah sangat dengan apa yang dimulakan oleh mereka yang tidak bertanggungjawab, dan akhirnya kita sendiri yang menyebabkan perkara ini jadi lebih keruh, Datuk, lebih buruk lagi.
Yes, of course.
InsyaAllah. Okey, baik. Kejap lagi, Datuk, kita kejap lagi nak tanyakan, nak minta nasihat daripada Datuk. Macam mana kita nak memperbaiki kecelaruan daripada istilahnya, daripada isu-isu terkini, daripada apa yang ditempelak ke atas Muslim seluruh dunia, malah di negara kita sendiri. Mungkin ada nasihat-nasihat yang Datuk nak berikan. Tapi awal tadi sebelum sempat Datuk bersama, sempat juga kita jumpa dengan rakan-rakan staf di IKIM. Mereka banyak menyebutkan sewaktu Datuk sebagai bertugas ataupun diamanahkan sebagai Ketua Pengarah di sini, Datuk banyak memberi bukan kebebasan, motivasi juga. Maknanya kalau mereka yang dalam satu bidang tertentu, kau buat kerja kau, yang penting bila saya tanya, you know what to answer. Mungkin kat situ Datuk boleh kongsikan sikit sekejap lagi motivasi ataupun nasihat bagaimana menjadi seorang yang amanah, seorang Muslim yang amanah dalam kerjaya dan komitmen masing-masing juga. Dan insyaAllah kita nak beres ketika kita akan kembali perkongsian lanjut.
Betul. Dan juga nak tanya kepada Datuk juga lah, macam mana nak jadi orang yang berjaya, Datuk.
Ya.
Ini motivasi-motivasi daripada mereka yang penuh dengan kaya dengan pengalaman ni. Pian kita akan beres ketika kembali.
Sebenarnya tak habis lagi soalan pasal istilah tadi tu. Apa pun insyaAllah kembali selepas ini di Warna Pagi.
IKIMfm, pilihan utama anda.
Anda 8.46 minit pagi. Terima kasih untuk sahabat-sahabat yang masih lagi bersama kami untuk perkongsian segmen Inspirasiku bersama yang berbahagia Datuk Dr. Syed Ali Tawfik Al-Attas yang merupakan Mantan Ketua Pengarah Institut Kefahaman Islam Malaysia.
Ya, masih lagi bersama kita pagi ini, dan dah banyak kita tanyakan kepada yang bagi Datuk berkaitan dengan pandangan beliau sendiri. Macam mana, Datuk? Kita mungkin Datuk boleh kongsikan ataupun nak menjelaskan lebih lanjut tentang corruption of knowledge tadi. Pada awal tadi.
Saya rasa lebih baik kita bagi contoh.
Okey, contoh.
Boleh.
First you have to begin with a small story, a small tamthil first. Supposing one day you find there was a hunter, and this hunter, he goes into the forest to do his hunting by himself.
Right.
And one day he hears this strange sound. Sounds like somebody groaning. So he goes to look for the source of the sound, and he finds there's a bear stuck underneath a rock, and the bear is in great pain, can't escape. So this hunter's obviously scared. He doesn't know what to do because it's a bear. But he approaches the bear very gently, very slowly, and he gently lifts the rock off the bear, and the bear runs away. Oh, the hunter feels, at least, alhamdulillah, I wasn't mauled by the bear, right? Next morning he opens his hut, the door of his hut, and he finds that there's a big pile of fruit in front of his hut. And he's wondering, where did this come from? He doesn't realize who could have put this pile of fruit in front of his hut. The next morning he opens the door, he sees a huge pile of fish, and then he starts to suspect, maybe it's the bear. So he thinks to himself he's gonna be very alert the next day. And the next day he hears something at the door, and he opens the door and he sees the bear there leaving some honey. So now he knows the bear is giving him some gifts.
Yeah.
So gradually he becomes friendly with the bear. The bear also becomes friendly with him. And soon enough they become great friends, fast friends. And one day the bear and the hunter are walking through the forest. And the hunter feels tired. So he tells the bear, you know, brother bear, I'd like to take a rest for a little while. But do me a favor, watch over me so that nothing happens to me. So the bear says, yes, master, whatever you desire, I will look after you with my life. So the hunter falls asleep, and the bear is watching over the hunter. Pretty soon, the bear notices a mosquito, and this mosquito is flying around the hunter's head, flying, and then he lands on the hunter's forehead. When the bear sees the mosquito land on the hunter's forehead, he gets, oh, this is not good. So the bear slaps the mosquito on the hunter's forehead. Of course, it's a bear hitting a man. So the man dies.
Allah.
Obviously, I mean, the bear hit a man. Obviously, the fellow's dead, isn't it? So the point of the story is, don't put your trust in fools. You know, this is unfortunately our problem when it comes to knowledge now. If you put the trust of knowledge in the hands of those people who are not equipped to deal with this knowledge, in other words, who are fools, what you're going to get is a corruption of that knowledge. If now you start talking about the problems of today's Muslim world or today's youth or whatever it is, without knowing anything to do with history, you just open your mouth and start talking, without knowing any history. And I don't mean history in terms of the tarikh, in terms of the dates, macam kita dulu di bangku sekolah kan, 1511, Alfonso di Albuquerque datang ke Melaka, all this we know already, it's very easy.
Yeah.
But itu dikatakan history, sejarah dari segi zahirnya. Tapi apakah sejarah itu dari segi batinnya? Then you have to know the why something happened. Now, if you talk about any subject today without knowing the whys of what happened in history, you're not going to find any kind of conclusion. This, unfortunately, again, is the realm of politics today. The politics and politicians, they open their mouth to say things which they don't understand anything about. They have no understanding of what the problem is. They have no understanding what the historical precedence is. They just buka mulut cakap, as if they are an authority. And people look at them as if, yes, they know what they're talking about. And as a result, they corrupt the knowledge. And when people like me try to tell them that this is not the way things are, this is not how history has taught, they ignore. Therefore, they are corrupting. And therefore, we can always say, dalam natijahnya, we can say that the only thing we have learned from history is that we have learned nothing from history.
MashaAllah. What if, Datuk, if the politicians or leaders have some so-called advisors among them to advise in any matters of...
Well, if they had advisors who gave them the proper advice, then you wouldn't have the problem. If the advisors was giving the proper advice, it's not just politics and politicians. These are also extended towards the people who are in charge of the religion.
It's salah satu gambaran yang sangat cantik yang Datuk ceritakan tadi tentang seorang lelaki dan beruang itu, menggambarkan bagaimana corruption of knowledge boleh berlaku dalam kehidupan kita untuk bila-bila masa sesiapa saja, Datuk. Dan mungkin Datuk, so then what should we do in handling this issue, Datuk, ataupun menguruskan corruption of knowledge sekarang?
Well, you have
everybody, especially.
Well, you have to get the proper knowledge. You have to get proper knowledge. You have to understand history. You have to understand many things. You have to understand language. You have to understand history. You have to understand philosophy as well. And I don't mean philosophy in the Western sense. I mean hikmah. I don't mean philosophy falsafa. There's a difference there.
Yeah.
And therefore you need to know these things. And I'm not saying that every single person needs to know this. Of course not. That's not possible for everyone to know. But the people who do know should be given the opportunity to actually lead and to actually show the way. Otherwise, you are going to get a lost society. You're going to get someone a society with a crisis of identity.
So, how do we as Muslims, moving forward? Kita dah tinggalkan sejarah ni. Kita nak ke hadapan, move on with our life, dan mencari sinar yang hilang.
Well, you cannot put history behind you. You cannot say we can forget about history for the time being. That's not possible. You have to look at history.
Always.
Of course. I mean, there is something in history which you can look back on and learn from. For instance, this problem today of ISIS, of Daesh, they are saying that this is all a problem of the corruption of knowledge, which is half true. They say that they are corrupting the religion of Islam for their own benefit. That also is half true. But in reality, how did ISIS or this Daesh come about? There is a historical precedence. I mean, these people are young people. They're not old people. And therefore, these are the people who have experienced war in the Middle East. These are all people a product of that war in the Middle East. Why is there a war in the Middle East? What was it that led to this war in the Middle East? It was greed. Greed that led to the war in the Middle East. This division, this sectarianism, all because of greed. And now these people are coming back for revenge. I mean, if you are, let me ask a question now. If for instance, you suffered through sanctions, and by the way, sanctions are the biggest killer. It is not chemical weapons. It is not biological weapons. It is not nuclear weapons. It is sanctions. Sanctions done on the people of Iraq, for instance, for 10 years, without any kind of without any support from other Muslims, cut off completely, without any resource to resupply to tools and to spare parts to fix their problems, like the electrical generators that power the sewage system, the water treatment plants. 500,000 children perished in that during the sanctions. 500,000, you just imagine. Many other people from the adults, millions died. Now, if you had your mother, your brother, your sister, your aunt, all these people were killed because of that, or because of an unjust war in your own country, an invasion force, don't you think that you would have some kind of a psychological impact? This is all revenge. It's got nothing to do with Islam. Islam is being used as a justification for what they are doing. But in reality, you can't do that. I mean, who are these people fighting? They are fighting the Muslims as well. They are not fighting the occupiers. They are not fighting the ones who actually brought this malaise to them. They are not fighting the ones who brought the tragedy to them. They are fighting other Muslims. There is a hadith of the Prophet, isn't it? There is a story about the Prophet, actually, a sunnah. When the Prophet's army went to defeat a nation, just as they were about to come in, they heard the adhan, the call to prayer. And as soon as they heard that, the Prophet asked to retreat. And the companions asked, why? So because they are allowed to practice Islam freely. I can hear the adhan. Now, if you have a country where the Muslims are in the minority, but they are allowed to practice Islam freely, you have no business attacking them. But what are they doing? They are attacking Muslims. They are killing Muslims, all in the name of Islam. But this is not because of Islam. It's because of revenge. And here we are, our young youth in Malaysia, who know nothing about any kind of history. They are just so attracted by this ideology of jihad, which has been corrupted by these people who know nothing about that, to go over there and sacrifice themselves, and it's not even their problem. This is what I find really strange. Now, our politicians, they know nothing about this. How is it they don't know any history at all?
So, it means we have a lack of information and knowledge as well about what really happened.
Well, this is why I was saying just now, you cannot leave history first and then move forward. In order to move forward, you have to look back. In order to move forward, you have to look back. It's always like that.
So then the revenge will always happen.
I mean, do we now, today, in Malaysia, are we so arrogant we think we know everything? Ini yang terbaik, ini yang terbesar, ini yang terpanjang, ini yang whatever it is. Yes. Right? We have this fascination with being the best. But were not the Bani Ad and the Thamud also like that? The Madian also were like that? And these are all mathal in the Quran, isn't it? We didn't learn anything?
Supposed to learn, should learn, and must learn from it. Subhanallah. Terima kasih Datuk atas penjelasan yang sangat mengetuk hati kita semua pada pagi yang berbahagia ini. Mungkin sahabat-sahabat mungkin jelas dan terang apa yang Datuk sebutkan sebentar tadi. Ada seorang sahabat kita yang juga merupakan fellow di IKIM tanyakan soalan Datuk tentang mungkin lebih spesifik pada apa strategi yang diperlukan oleh umat Islam dari dalam sudut pendidikan dan ekonomi, kalau mungkin menambah daripada apa yang Datuk sebutkan tadi.
Atau where to start, Datuk?
Education.
And economy as well.
No, you have to start with education. You have to start with education. I mean, wasn't the Prophet, was it Prophet Dawood that was asked, or was it Sulaiman? He was asked, which would you rather have? Would you rather have money, power, or knowledge? And he answered, Sulaiman. And he answered, knowledge, because with knowledge I have both money, power and wealth.
Okay.
So, I mean, we have to start with education. Everything starts with education, but a proper education. I mean, nowadays we talk a lot. In fact, the government has even put forth this strategy for science and technology. But for the Muslim, if you say science, it is not the same thing as ilmu. Ilmu is far more, lebih lagi mendalam. It already includes science in the Western sense. I mean, when we talk science, dalam istilah bahasa Inggris ni, we are using actually a Western connotation, which means we are talking about physical sciences, physics. We're not talking about metaphysics. We're not talking about spiritual matters. Padahal ilmu talks about everything, not just the what do you call it, the ilmu tabi'iyat, but also ilahiyat and all this other stuff. But we are not learning this. Now we're talking about science and technology. Keharapan science and technology. It's not just science and technology. I think what really lacking in Malaysia is the fact that we ignore the humanities. We ignore history. We ignore philosophy. We ignore literature. We ignore the arts. These things need to be further developed, because this is what we absolutely need. Because without the humanity, I mean, without the humanities, there is no humanity. In other words, without the humanities, in other words, the science kesastraan, then there is no humanity. We lose humanity. And this is exactly what's happening. We need to emphasize the literature, the science, I mean, the science of literature, the science of history. When we say science of history, we mean the whatness of history, the whyness of history. That's what we mean. We mean why. Why something happened, not what happened. We already know that. That's quite clear. But why? Why something happened, we need to know that. It's a study of history. We don't have this. We need to have emphasis on the humanities. I hope that the Malaysian government, in looking forward, instead of looking too much on these electronic things, science, technology, all these electrical things, this is not going to advance the people. This is not going to make people better. On the contrary, this is going to make people worse, because they're going to lose the element of humanity. And as a result, we don't even think we are going to have a rich nation. We're going to be a corrupt nation. We are going to be a nation which is confused. We are going to have problems in this country if we don't pay attention to the humanities. This is a big problem. If you want to move forward, this is what you do. You start with the humanities. All these problems today with regard to extremism is a result of our ignorance with the humanities. And if we have a transformation plan in terms of economics, right? You said just now.
Yeah.
I want to ask, if we are looking forward to 2050, I'm not even going to look forward that far. 2030 is enough. I will ask this 4 questions. In 2030, there's probably going to be 8.5 billion people on the planet. Where are we going to get our energy from? Where is the source of energy? We need to find renewable sources of energy. Is Malaysia doing something about that? Secondly, we need to find a source of food to feed 8.5 billion people. Where is that going to come from? Are we going to burn down all the forests to put agricultural land there? Or are we going to find other means? Thirdly, what about clean water? In Malaysia, we have a crisis when it comes to water, isn't it? Always there's no water. The pipes run dry, everybody gets upset. And then banjir. Where is the water going to come from? Clean supply of water to quench every human being on this earth. But the last one, the last question, which is the most important in my opinion, what about waste? What are we going to do about the waste that we generate? This is a huge problem that we haven't solved yet. Already now this country is rife with people throwing waste all over the place. This again is a question of adab, isn't it? Not adab in terms of manners, but in terms of ethics. This is what adab also encompasses. How are we going to deal with these 4 issues? Do we have any answer to that? Or are we just talking about science, technology, and numbers, KPIs? These are all deceiving, actually. KPI is all deceiving. You actually look at the reality. If you really want to, yang dikatakan oleh pihak ahli siasah ni, turun ke padang. Really? Do you really turun ke padang? Or do you wait for the election before you turun ke padang? Are you really one Malaysia? People first? What people? What about people like us? They should pay more emphasis to that. Instead of only turun ke padang, wait for the time of the election, then turun padang. And then ask, siapa akar umbi? But why? Why do you ask the grassroots? The thing that holds the earth is not the grass, it's the trees.
MashaAllah.
Isn't it? But the problem is you cannot see the trees for the forest.
Yes.
Or you can't see the forest for the tree, rather. That's the problem here. You can't see the forest for the trees.
Okey, Datuk.
Masya Allah, itu dia.
Take a break sekejap. Kita nak berehat seketika. Kita sambung selepas ini. Okay?
Hikmah, wisdom and everything. Pada perbincangan kita hari ini, kita berehat sekejap. Ada pesanan lanjut daripada yang berbahagia, Datuk Dr. Syed Tawfik Al-Attas sebentar saja lagi di Warna Pagi. Dan Alhamdulillah banyak yang kita kutip dan peroleh hari ini from the words of wisdom from our guest, honorable guest today, yang berbahagia Datuk Dr. Syed Tawfik Al-Attas, yang merupakan mantan Ketua Pengarah IKIM yang ketiga. Dan dah kita berada di hujung, Datuk. Mungkin di hujung ni Datuk nak kongsikan pesanan dan nasihat kepada kami untuk jadi lebih baik, Datuk.
Kalau boleh saya ingin mengatakan sedikit sebanyak mengenai kaki tangan di IKIM di sini semasa saya bertugas. Of course I have to express my appreciation to Tun Abdullah for giving me the opportunity, but also more to Tun Ahmad Sarji. I think he was the one who really gave me a lot of freedom, gave me a lot of latitude in my work, in my thought. And of course my staff. I mean, all my staff that were here were fantastic. I mean, I can't complain anything about them. I have to remember, of course, the work of the former administrator of IKIM, Abdullah Sani, Allah yarhamhu. Very, very good man. Very, very good man. He was instrumental actually in the first few years of my administration. He was a great help to me, and I really, may Allah bless him. May Allah admit him to the ample gardens of his paradise. And of course, Puan Sarina, Puan Sapwa, Nafiza, my secretary Azla, and of course Azli, and of course the radio staff. They were all instrumental actually in keeping IKIM the way it is. I mean, it is not only the person who leads IKIM which is important, but the people who are staffing IKIM which is important. And I think IKIM should continue in its according to its matlaman. I think I'd like to congratulate them as well for 25 years. Right. And this is no small feat. And I think it is in large part due to the work of Tun Ahmad Sarji, actually, to tell you the truth, that has kept IKIM alive all these years. It is undoubtedly his efforts which has made IKIM what it is today. As far as the listeners of Radio IKIM are concerned, if I've said anything which has offended you, I hope you will forgive my trespass, and inshallah we will meet soon.
InsyaAllah. Kita anggap itu semua nasihat-nasihat yang baik, Datuk, kepada kita semua. Dan mungkin di ujung ni mungkin Datuk juga ada nasihat, especially for those teenagers, for those Muslims yang mendengar, supaya dapat inspirasi sedikit daripada Datuk pagi Datuk. Sikit nasihat untuk kita semua.
Well, I don't think you should give up what you're doing if you're doing good, obviously. Success is not something that actually success is very subjective. When you say kejayaan, or this is all subjective actually. Depends who is looking, who is judging. Exactly. If you think success is a big car, a big house, lots of money, I don't think that's success. I mean, if you are a successful person, you are a person who is a good person. And what is a good person? A good person is when he speaks, he tells the truth. When he's given a trust, he doesn't betray that trust. When he makes a promise, he keeps that promise. Right. This is a good person. This is a good leader. And I hope that my example in IKIM was just that. That when I spoke, as far as I know, to be the truth. When I was given amana, I kept it. When I made a promise, I kept that promise. And if you are now thinking that you are going to go into politics because you want money, wealth, think about that. Think about the fact that you first have to be a good person. You first have to be a good leader. You first have to be able to abide by the principles of Islam, which is to tell the truth, to keep your promise, and to hold firm to the amanah given to you. This is what I think I can say.
Masya Allah. Thank you so much, Datuk. Satu nasihat yang sangat baik untuk kita semua, sesiapa saja yang mendengarkan, untuk menjadi seorang Muslim yang lebih baik dan juga mengangkat tinggi menjulang agama itu sendiri.
Maknanya amanah selama 2 penggal yang Datuk pegang, di memegang jawatan sebagai Ketua Pengarah IKIM ketika dulu, dijalankan dengan baik. Dan saya suka dengan apa yang Datuk katakan pasal ukuran kejayaan tu bukan sekadar wang ringgit semata-mata, tapi ada benda lain yang perlu kita tengok juga kan.
Terima kasih banyak-banyak Datuk. Kami minta maaf juga kalau ada soalan-soalan yang mungkin tidak sesuai dengan apa yang Datuk kendaki. Dan sangat menghargai kehadiran your presence today bersama-sama sahabat pendengar IKIMfm pagi ni. Jumpa lagi insya-Allah Datuk. Semoga dikurniakan barakah dan juga kesihatan selalu.
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kerana mendengar rancangan ini. Untuk mendapatkan lebih lagi rancangan menarik, sila ke website ikimfm.my. IKIM FM, pilihan utama anda.